So to continue our discussion on Havdalah, we'll review and then do some new things. So the first question we have to discuss regarding Havdalah is the mitzvah of Havdalah a mitzvah min haTorah or a mitzvah midrabanan? Is it a rabbinical mitzvah or is it a biblical mitzvah? The Rambam writes that Havdalah is part of the same mitzvah as Kiddush. That the mitzvah of Kiddush is to bring in Shabbos with its special words beforehand, Bechnisaso, in its entrance, Uve Yitziaso, and the Rambam writes that is the mitzvah of Havdalah. Havdalah is separating Kodesh L'chol, holiness from the mundane, obviously in different directions. And therefore, the Rambam's opinion is that Havdalah is a mitzvah min haTorah. Not only is it a mitzvah min haTorah, but the same basis as the mitzvah of Kiddush. That's the Shitas HaRambam. There are other Rishonim who hold it's daraisa, it's biblical, but it has nothing to do with the mitzvah of Kiddush. In fact, it's a pasuk in Parashat Shmini, Vayikra Yud Aleph, Mem Zayin, I think. Tezayin, Mem Zayin, I can't read. Lahavdil ben atame lahatar tahar. That you separate tame from tahar. So the Gemara over there discusses, the Rishonim discuss that perhaps that's the source for the mitzvah Havdalah, to separate tame from tahar, kodesh from chol, and therefore it's a mitzvah daraisa, nothing to do with Kiddush. And many other Rishonim disagree with both, with the Rambam source as well as the source, and say there is no biblical source for Havdalah, because Havdalah is only a rabbinical mitzvah, and therefore it is not like Kiddush. Everyone agrees Kiddush is a biblical mitzvah. It's how much of Kiddush is biblical. Havdalah, whether Havdalah itself is biblical or not, that itself is a fundamental machlokas. And Rashi writes in Nazir Daf Gimel Amid Beis, the Havdalah b'motzai Shabbos min haTorah. It seems to be the shita of Rashi. It's a whole discussion over there in the Gemara in Nazir about a Nazir, whether they could drink from the wine in Havdalah. Do I say Mushpa v'Omei me Har Sinai? That they're ready, on every Jew in Har Sinai committed to make Kiddush and Havdalah. So it's mashma for them Rishonim there, like Rashi, that not only is Kiddush daraisa, Kiddush al hayayin, or not only is Havdalah daraisa, the Havdalah al hayayin is daraisa. And others, Tosas, others according to Gemara, differently. And the Rambam, as we mentioned, I'll quote you the language of the Rambam in Perek Kaftes, in Hilchos Shabbos, Halacha Aleph, Mitzvahs Aseh min haTorah l'kadesh Yom HaShabbos v'dvarim. The mitzvah is to sanctify the Shabbos with Dur Shemar, Zachar Yom HaShabbos l'kodsho. Kolmar, Zachreu Zechir Shabbos Sheva, Zechir Shabbos v'Kiddush. V'sarach l'zochor v'chniyasa v'Kiddush Hayom. You have to remember it in its entrance and its exit. And over there, the Rav Magid points out, Nira midivrei Rabbeinu, from the Rambam, that we see, as we point out, Havdalah is in our Torah, it's going down from Zachar. So, you have three shitas in the Rishonim. Whether Havdalah is daraisa, and if it is, then what's the source? Is it based on Kiddush, Zachar, Shom HaShabbos, L'Kodsho? Is it based on Lahavdil ben Tamei Latar, or is it a Din D'Rabbanan? So the Minchas Chinuch raises an interesting question. He raises by Kiddush. If you assume, like the Rambam, in other words, that the source of Kiddush, the source of Havdalah is based on Kiddush, so we know the halacha is by Kiddush, as we discussed in the Kiddush here, that you have to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim in Kiddush. So the question is, if you hold Havdalah is deraisa, but not based on Kiddush, Or if it's Rabbanan, you don't have the question. If you hold Havdalah is Daraisa based on Zachar, so it's a kasha on the Rambam, Wabalo Tiknu Lahaski Yitzias Mitzrayim Havdalah. How come there is no mention of Yitzias Mitzrayim in Havdalah? It was Havdalah. So, the Shita Mukubetzes in Beya, the Havdalah Beis, writes, B'Shem Sefer Machriya Be'emek Shela, B'Shem Rabbi Notan Shavdalah Eino Chayev in Torah. To discuss that question, that why isn't there Yitzias? Why isn't there Havdalah? Why isn't there Yitzias Havdalah? It's a whole question why it's not in Kiddush either. But that's that's for another time. So what about Havdalah ala Yayin? So we discussed Im Havdalah ala Yayin hu min haTorah midrabanan. So the Rashba is like the Rambam. The Havdalah min haTorah hu b'tfilah v'lo Yayin. The Iker Havdalah is only over words. Ulam edivrei Rashi and Nazir. And Tosas perhaps writes Havdalah ala Yayin havi min haTorah. That's the whole discussion. It's about a Nazir. A further discussion within Havdalah is what happens if you don't make Havdalah Saturday night, Motzai Shabbos, and you make it Sunday? If you, according to the opinions that Havdalah is Daraisa, is it Daraisa up until Tuesday sunset? That's halacha. You can make Havdalah until Tuesday sunset, or even Sunday. Do I say the Havdalah I make Sunday? Is that Daraisa, or do I say only Saturday night is Daraisa? So, the Pri Megaddin writes to make a big chiddush. He writes that even according to Manda Amar, Havdalah is Daraisa, Haino Davka B'Leil Motzoi Shabbos. That's only on Saturday, Motzoi Shabbos, that Havdalah is Daraisa. But Im Lo Hivdia B'Layla, but if you didn't make Havdalah at night, after Mechuyev Havdalah Achakach, even though you're obligated to make Havdalah afterwards, Mikol Makam Modim B'Lo Haviel Midrabanan. So the Pri Megaddin wants to say a big chiddush that even according to the Shittas that say Havdalah is Daraisa, that's only Motzoi Shabbos. But if you can make it Sunday or after, it's only Drabanan. And many ask on the Pri Megaddin, why should that be? Because we know the halacha is by Kiddush, especially according to the Rambam, that learn out the laws of Kiddush. The halacha is if you don't make Kiddush Friday night, you're still obligated in Kiddush Shabbos morning. So too, one perhaps could argue, what is the difference between Kiddush and Havdalah? So to answer this kasha, the Taz in Yeridea quotes in the B'Shem Habach, L'hayar sheyesh stira, there seems to be an apparent contradiction in the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. What is the apparent contradiction? The apparent contradiction is Inyan Avelos Pasak HaMachaber the Katan Shemeis Aviv Ve'imo Vafil Higdel B'Selch Shiva Batel Meno Kol Din Avelos Eno Chayev, that a Katan who becomes a Gadol in the middle of Shiva, so he's not Chayev in Shiva. He doesn't have to do Avelos. And yet in Yeridea the psak is regarding Havdalah. Sha'onin chayiv acha kach lahavdia. The lach is if you're an onin, let's say someone in the time of the death, one of your loved ones died, and the burial is not until Sunday. So therefore you're an onin, you can't make Havdalah Saturday night, but when you come home, after the kfura, after the burial, so you chayiv. So the question is, why is it, by the case of Avelos, by a katan shehigdio, with that he's not chayiv in Avelos, but we paskin an onein is. So they quote from different achronim, the ancient kasha, because there is machokas haposkim, there's a machokas haposkim ben Amaram Rinberg laharash, and same by onein. By the case of Avelos, it's a machokas rishonim the Maram and the Rush, and the machokas rishonim as well by onein b'Havdalah. So therefore, the Rush gives us a general rule, as we've mentioned many times: a suffix on a din daraisa, a doubt on a biblical law was strict, a doubt on a rabbinic law was lenient. So by Avelis, which is only D'Rabbanan, so we say it's a case of Suffolk, and also Suffolk would divrei Hamekel B'Avelis. But Havdalah is Daraisa, according to the Rambam and others, and therefore we want to be Machmel Sveika Daraisa, and therefore that's why. But perhaps you could say there's no fundamental difference between the two. One is Daraisa, and one is D'Rabbanan. And regarding the other issue is, what about a woman's obligation, Havdalah? So if we look in the Shulchan Aruch in Reish Sadivav, Sivches, the Nashim Chayavas B'Havdalah. Women are obligated in Havdalah, Kishem Shein Chayavas B'Kiddush. So the Mechaber quotes that a woman are obligated in Havdalah, quotes the Shitas of Rambam, that a woman are obligated in Havdalah just like they're obligated in Kiddush. Yesh mi shecholek, and there are those who disagree. V'harama Mosif, and the Rama adds, therefore, because it's a machlokes, the woman should not make her own Havdalah. Rak yishmu Havdalah min ha'noshim. She should hear Havdalah from a man. But das hacholek, who's that opinion? The yesh mi shecholek. That is the Orchos Chaim, the Nashim Paturo. So you have a whole gamut. You have the Rambam who writes, women are obligated in Havdalah min ha'Torah. You have the Orchos Chaim who writes, women are obligated in Havdalah, period. They are exempt both biblically and rabbinically. According to the Rambam, there's nothing to talk about. Of course she's chayiv in Havdalah, because it's the same chayiv as Kiddush. However, if you don't hold like the Rambam, therefore Havdalah is, even if you hold it's Daraisa, but it's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama, it's an independent mitzvah, and therefore a woman would be exempt. So there's a whole pshat in the Ramah. Why should that be? Why should that be that the Ramah writes that a woman should hear Kiddush from a man? Even because there's another famous machlokas Rishonim, and it's a machlokas Sfardi and Ashkenaz, whether a woman is obligated in Zman Grama, whether or not women are exempt in time-oriented mitzvahs, but the question is, can they make a bracha? Can they make a bracha on sukkah, on lulav, etc.? So, again, machlokas Rishonim, the minig Sfard is no, they don't. The minig Ashkenaz is yes. The minig Sfard is no, because how could you say it's Ivano? It's michse kashikr, looks like a lie, because you're not obligated, you're exempt. And according to the Ramah, it's that it's generic. We're going on the general, that chayis are chayiv in these mitzvahs, and therefore a woman can make a bracha even though she personally is not obligated. So that's the machlokas in general. So according to the Machaber here, it's not a case because the women are chayiv in Havdalah, so a Sephardi woman can make Havdalah. But according to Bnei Ashkenaz, we pass on women volunteer brachas even on a mitzvah they're exempt from. So why is Havdalah different than lulav and sukkah and all the other mitzvahs as mangroma? So the Magen Avraham writes the difference is by sukkah, by lulav, those are mitzvahs yesh bo maisa. They have an action involved. You're shaking the lulav, that's the ikr. You're shaking, that's the mitzvah. You're shaking the lulav, you're eating the matzah, you're sitting in the sukkah. But by Havdalah, it's all a bracha. Ma'avde ben kodesh shulcho. So therefore, the Magen Avraham claims Chazal never told women to volunteer brachas on mitzvahs that only come in a bracha form. That's why the Magen Avraham says as well by Kiddush Shavana. Even though it's a mitzvah say shazman gram, so why don't women do it? So why is the meaning for women not to say Kiddush Shavana? That's because the same as Havdalah, according to Magen Avraham, it's a mitzvah that only involves a bracha, and therefore you don't make a bracha. The Taz gives another reason. So we see the Taz is cholek on the Rambam, and those Rishonim who hold it's Daraisa. Because the Taz holds Havdalah is only D'Rabbanan. And therefore he says, when do we find the Gemara obligates you or permits you to make a bracha on a mitzvah saseh shezman grama? That's a biblical mitzvah, like lulav, sukkah, matzah. But a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, we don't find Chazal encouraged you and told you to make a bracha, according to the Ashkenaz. And therefore the Rata is right, it's a tartain, it's a double D'Rabbanan. When it's a double D'Rabbanan, so, because Havdalah is D'Rabbanan, and when it's Zman Grama, so therefore women should not make Havdalah by themselves. And that's why, according to this, then that would explain the sheet that says women are exempt from Kiddush Shabbos morning, because that's a Din D'Rabbanan as well, and it's a Zman Grama. So to conclude, even though it's a Machokas in the Machaber 2 days, and the Ramah writes a woman should hear from a man, push comes to shove, let's say a woman is alone and she has no man around, so the halacha is a woman should make her own Havdalah. Because Rechoshesh Rashitas HaRambam. And therefore, some want to say that since it's a shaila about Borei Me'orei Eish, if she's chayiv or not, so then if she's chayiv in Havdalah, but only putter in Borei Eish, it might be a hefsek. Therefore, some posts can recommend that when a woman makes Havdalah, she should make the Borei Me'orei Eish after she already drinks the wine.